A verdict of obedience of the Sharia court on a disobedient Muslim wife. This is a love story that was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. All characters in this book are fictional and any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This story is about 3 Muslim girls who were subjected to gross injustice, severe violence, and abhorrent persecution by Muslim men, religious leaders, Sharia court judges, and police officers in the Islamic community and the religion of Islam and its misogynistic, hateful, and abusive teachings against women's rights, which are innumerable. For example, beating of women, polygamy, child marriage, circumcision of the private parts of small Muslim girls, which is known as female genital mutilation or FGM, slaying them in honor killings, inequality between males and females in inheritance, testimony in court, marriage, divorce, men's guardianship over women, controlling their lives and destinies as if they are minors, physically handicapped or mentally retarded, and forcing them to wear the hijab, niqab, or the humiliating burqa, which makes them appear as if they are scary ghosts. Muslim men are allowed by the Quran to have sex or rather rape without the need for marriage captive women of war such as wives, daughters, sisters, and even mothers of the defeated enemies who are called unclean infidels such as Jews, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, atheists, etc. Islam forbids a Muslim woman to become a president of a country or a boss at work or a judge in court, and she is strictly forbidden to lead men or women in prayer as an imama. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad said the woman is an unclean creature just like a dog and a donkey, and therefore as a defiled being she annuls the man's prayer if she passes in front of him while he is praying. The Quran likens the woman to the human feces which spoils the man's ablution or religious cleansing. Many Islamic countries prevent women from going to school and work, and they are not permitted to drive cars, bicycles, or motorbikes. And none of them is allowed to leave the house without her husband or with the muharram man the woman is forbidden to marry, such as her father or brother. They are forbidden to practice any kind of sports, such as soccer, basketball, volleyball, and tennis, and they are not allowed to go to gymnastics, beaches, or swimming pools, cinemas, or theaters, or act as heroines in movies or actors in the stage in plays, or be female singers, or compete in beauty contests such Miss World or Miss Universe. They are not permitted to be reciters of the verses of their holy Quran because the Prophet Muhammad said the woman is a wara or naked and her voice is a wara too. Muslim women are also not allowed to fall in love with Muslim men before marriage or choose their future husbands or life partners. This story is about the 3 innocent Muslim girls, Intisar, Firdaus, and Mona. Chapter 62. Mental and spiritual changes in the life of the fugitive Muslim girl. The runaway Muslim girl Intisar started to change from the first day she started living with the Coptic Christian family that took her in. In a short time, she changed in many ways such as physically, mentally, spiritually, and morally. In her outward appearance, she changed her manner of dressing, the way she walked and spoke. She is very impressed with her new friend, Susan. Therefore, the Muslim girl started wearing pants and a shirt like the Coptic girl. She even wore skinny jeans and very short dresses. In size and height, the Christian girl and the Muslim girl are like twin sisters. The Coptic girl gave her new Arab friend half of her dresses. She took her to the beauty salon and changed her hairstyle. Intisar went with Suzanne to many places. The Muslim girl with her Christian friend went to the pool and put on a bikini. Susan also takes her new friend Intisar whenever she goes to tennis and basketball training. In addition to all that, I took her for gymnastics exercises in the gym. Intisar started learning to swim, play basketball, volleyball, and do physical exercises. In her city, Gadaref, and among her Muslim community and people, these physical sports practices are prohibited for females. The girl herself is taboo and kept in her house just like a totem animal waiting for a man to come and devour her body through sham halal Islamic marriage and cruel rape. Accordingly, the Muslim girl, Intisar, felt as if she had remained since childhood inside a concentration camp, a maximum security prison, or an iron cage, until fate released her and brought her to a loving Christian family. The differences between her previous life and her new life as a girl who traveled from Tora Bora in Afghanistan or Timbuktu in Mali or Mogadishu in Somalia and landed in London in the UK, New York in the US, or Paris in France. Therefore, Intisar completely transformed in a short period of time into a completely different girl. She is like a caterpillar that emerged from its ugly cocoon and became a beautiful butterfly and began to fly on colorful wings among the flowers and roses. She shed her coffin-like Islamic clothes and put on beautiful Western dresses. That is why the Muslim neighbors of the Coptic family considered Susan's new friend to be an Ethiopian Christian girl or an Eritrean refugee. They know that a Muslim girl will never agree to dress like a boy as Intisar is now dressed. This is why they concluded that she was born and raised in an Ethiopian Christian family. Moreover, the new girl's regular visits to the Christian church confirmed the conclusions of the Muslim neighbors. However, these external changes are nothing if we have to compare them with the internal changes that happened to the new Muslim girl. In a short period of time, the life of the so-called disobedient Muslim wife, a fugitive from justice, who now lives in the home of a Christian family, has changed. She completely changed her way of thinking. Living with this loving Coptic family prompted the runaway wife, Intisar, to abandon many of the religious values of her Islamic faith. Before that, these values were always considered good and just, but the way Muslim thinkers and scholars interpreted them is wrong. Then she tried to find out why scholars, translators, commentators, and thinkers misinterpreted these heavenly values and made them unfair and a source of hatred and mistreatment of women in inhumane and abhorrent ways. To reach the right conclusion, her mind struggled a lot. She had believed since childhood that these religious laws and values were revealed by God from heaven to earth through his infallible prophet Muhammad and are therefore complete, good, and just. They are fixed, irreparable, and applicable at all times and places. No one has the right to change them. They are not open to any kind of reform or improvement because they are complete, comprehensive, and perfect. For this reason, the oppressed, abused, and slandered disobedient Muslim wife and the fugitive from the rule of obedience, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, has always been accustomed to blaming thinkers, scholars, interpreters, Sharia judges, and religious leaders who are supposed to have misinterpreted these fair, heavenly Islamic values. She believed that if properly interpreted they would be fair and good for anyone who applied for them. And they will do good to any man or woman to whom the leaders have properly applied on them. However, her chance meeting and short stay with the Coptic Christian family exposed her to new and different religious laws and social values. She began to ponder the differences between the two sets of values, Islamic Sharia laws and Christian religious values. Her bitter experience in her home city of Gedaref and the streets of Khartoum led her to compare the religious laws on which her Islamic values were built with the Christian religious laws and values of the Coptic family. The result of her simple comparison showed her that their Christian laws are better than her Islamic laws. At least in her case, she would not have gone through such abuse and suffering if it happened that she was born as a Christian girl and raised since childhood in the Christian religion. For the first time in her life, the Muslim girl, who has strayed from Islamic justice, begins to point fingers at her religious laws. She stopped blaming the interpreters and implementers of those anti-women Islamic beliefs and misogynistic teachings. She concluded that these unfair religious laws were designed to offend women. So, these evil laws cannot be inspired by a loving and just God. The same religious laws gave her half-brother Omar as a man guardian the right to sell her in what was called a permissible Islamic marriage, as if she was a slave owned by him who has a successor of her deceased father to marry her without her consent to the alleged lawful Muslim husband, the selfish man Hassan Majub al-Hilali. They also allowed him to sell her late, innocent sister Firdaus to an old man of her grandfather's age. Because of those unjust and hostile Islamic rules and regulations that govern the daily life of Muslim women from their birth until their death, the judge of the Sharia court in Gadaref city issued a verdict of obedience to her 15-year-old minor sister. The same unjust laws caused Firdaus to be kidnapped by 5 armed policemen. They forcefully took her to live with an old man whom she neither loved nor wished to marry. They also allowed the same judge of the Sharia court to pass the same law of slavery on her, euphemistically called the rule of obedience, which compelled her to flee her home and her city. They made her wander aimlessly for 3 days and 3 nights without money and shoes in the streets of Khartoum until finally God intervened, saved her life, and pulled her out of the deep waters of the Nile River. Then he carried her on eagle's wings and brought her to the Christian church where she met a loving Coptic family. Before her fate took her to the Christian church, she fell victim to the wicked lady and pimp called the compassionate Mother Nafisa, her first rapist, the fat bulbul, the ugly, cruel wife, Mrs. Sinasni, and her second rapist, the lustful military major. Although she lived for more than 2 months in the Coptic family's home, neither Reverend Madahana nor his son Naji attempted during the day or at night to rape her or look at her lustfully. They treat her as a daughter and sister. The way the good Christian man, Reverend Madahana, welcomed and treated her on the day she came to his church as a beggar and outcast girl was the turning point in her miserable life. This prompted her to remember the unkind and inhumane way in which the imam of the largest mosque in Khartoum city responded, not to help her as a beggar without shelter, money, and shoes for mercy and help. He considered her a disobedient wife, a street girl, and a dissolute woman. He even predicted that she would be a prostitute and sell her thighs to many men. He called her the rebellious daughter and runaway wife. He told his followers not to help such a useless girl and disobedient wife running away from her husband and family. In the church, Pastor Hannah believed her story, kept her in his home, and treated her as a victim of an evil plot and an unjust religious and legal system. After that, the Muslim girl Intisar started to compare herself to the Christian girl. She found Suzanne has a lot of freedom compared to her. She has a lover and will marry him sooner or later. No one can marry her without her consent to any other man. Her marriage contract is not valid unless she signs it with her own hands and with her future husband. No Protestant pastor, Orthodox priest, or Catholic priest in the entire world can marry a Christian girl to a man without her knowledge, consent, presence, and signature. Neither Suzanne's father, Reverend Madahana, nor her brother, Naji, can contract her marriage to another man without her knowledge and consent. If anything like this happened to her, the fake Christian marriage contract would remain void and therefore could not be enforced against her by any judge or any law enforcement officer. More serious than that, Christian or secular law would severely punish her father or brother for having committed such a heinous crime against his daughter or sister. Therefore, the Muslim girl, Intisar, understood that if she was a Christian, the Muslim imam, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, and her evil brother Omar would not have dared to contract her marriage without her knowledge, consent, presence, and signature. Likewise, the same horrific crime would not have been committed against her late sister, Firdaus, if she had been a Christian girl. After an honest and sincere comparison between her Islamic religious laws and Christian religious values regarding women in both religions, the Muslim girl reached the inevitable conclusion that Sharia laws are man-made while God revealed Christian values. From that day on, Intisar stopped completely blaming the interpreters, translators, scholars, judges, and religious leaders of those unjust and misogynistic laws and those other relatives who applied them or to whom they were applied. She saw them all as victims like herself. Yet she knew perfectly well that none of them would accept her conclusions. If they knew where she came from or how she reached those results, they would assume that she was brainwashed and deceived by those infidel Christians with whom she resides. When the Muslim girl, Intisar, reached this inevitable result, her heart was filled with fear, dread, panic, and terror. The accumulated religious knowledge of her Islamic faith did not allow her to consider converting to Christianity. She knows that the biggest abomination that a Muslim man or a Muslim woman can do is apostasy from Islam and embracing the Christian religion. This apostate Muslim person is said about him, God forbid, to have been converted to the distorted religion of Nazrania or Christianity in the Islamic community. Intisar received her intensive Islamic religious education at home and at school and through all social and religious media such as television, radio, and the internet. She always heard the voice of the Imam on the pulpit through loudspeakers in the mosque near her home that only Muslims will enter heaven and that followers of all religions they will all end up without exception in hell and be there and burned by an unquenchable fire forever. Fire is fueled by people and stones. She was born and raised in an Islamic worldly environment that made her believe in a firm faith that cannot be shaken. That Christians are lost people and that Jews are cursed. Hindus, Buddhists, Confucians, Sikhs, followers of the Baha'i faith, atheists, communists, feminists, and people of all other religions and sects are polytheists, infidels, people cursed by God and his angels, doomed to annihilation. And their final eternal abode is also in hell. Thus, she used to believe that all non-Muslims are infidels and enemies of God and his beloved Prophet Muhammad, and they are on their way to the fire of hell, where they will abide forever and ever, and whenever their skins are burned, God replaces them with other skins. She also heard many times the Imam said, "May God Allah curse the Christians and Jews and defeat them and make their women and children booty to Muslims." He called them infidels and brothers of monkeys and pigs. After the Muslim girl reached her new conclusion, she became very afraid of the hateful idea of apostasy from the true and tolerant Islamic religion and converting to the false, distorted, and corrupt Christian religion, and becoming a cursed apostate woman and a Christian infidel on her way to hell. In the beginning, the fleeing Muslim girl, Intisar, did not want to be an apostate from Islam and die as an impure, cursed, infidel Christian girl and go to hell. Death is her greatest evil. She considered it a final separation from her Muslim lover and fiancé, Sami, and her Muslim family, friends, and neighbors. She tried to push the idea of transforming into a different girl to another religion out of her mind, but her mind had already converted and she became another girl. Yet her heart still clung to her past life. She's in trouble again. She must either accept the conversion of her mind or live with a transformed mind and heart filled with fear of death and going to hell. She can't be true to herself anymore. Intisar felt like two people living in one body. These two persons are like two giants grappling inside her body and pulling her in opposite directions. Each giant strives to defeat his opponent and expel him from her body. She also felt that a new intruder had entered her body, possessed her heart and mind, and tried to force her to do something she hated. As a result, Intisar became anxious and spent many nights trying to find a compromise. When the entire Coptic family went to sleep, she sat on her bed and became deeply immersed in these two opposing thoughts. She tries to find a middle ground between the two opposing religions, but she finds no solution. In her bewilderment, she thought of becoming a Muslim and a Christian at the same time. But she understood that there is no such person in the whole world. It is just like someone trying to be a follower of Satan and God at the same time. These two religions are like two parallel lines that will never meet. She has to choose one of them, but in no uncertain terms she cannot be on both paths. Intisar's fear increased as she began to think about her current problem. She knows legally and religiously that she is considered the wife of Hassan Majub al-Hilali. Islamic law has given him this right. The Sharia court had authorized law enforcement police officers to arrest her and take her to his home. Accordingly, her lover and fiancé, Sami, can never be her legal husband as long as her so-called legal husband, Hassan, is alive, and he and his spies are looking for her. Even if she and Sami went to a far place in the Sudan and deceived the imam of that city and got married and lived as husband and wife, their marital relationship would continue as long as they were not discovered. What will happen if the truth about their illegal marriage comes out? According to Islamic law, Sami will receive 100 lashes because he illegally cohabited in a sexual relationship with a married girl. She will be stoned to death because she committed adultery with another man and is legally married to Hassan. Accordingly, Intisar understood that their insoluble problem was caused by Islam itself. As such, there is no solution available to their unsolvable problem in Islam. The only alternative available to solve their intractable problem is that she and her lover must convert to Christianity. If they both become Christians, their unsolvable problem will be automatically resolved. Her alleged halal Islamic marriage to Hassan will be annulled, and she can marry the lover she loves to marry. The Sharia court ruling, euphemistically called the verdict of obedience, would have no control over her life. However, the so-called disobedient runaway wife became frightened when she thought of converting to another religion and becoming an apostate and infidel girl. Intisar was able to live with a changed heart and mind and a troubled conscience for a period of time in the Christian house. But one day she shared her thoughts with her new Coptic Christian friend. Susan assured her that none of these problems would happen to her if she listened to her conscience. First of all, she will no longer submit to the religious canons of her former religion, Islam. Her marriage to Hassan will be automatically annulled and invalidated. She will be free to marry whoever she wants to marry. Secondly, she can travel to and live in a secular, foreign, Western country without fear of being killed as an apostate or adulterous wife. If her lover and fiancé Sammy accept her new faith, both friends can marry as Christians and emigrate to a foreign country. Their marriage will be conducted by a Christian priest. When Suzanne encouraged Intisar, her fears vanished and she embraced Christianity in her heart and mind. Although she had sincerely converted to Christianity, she still faced another serious problem. She needs to be baptized with water in her new faith. Otherwise, she will not be able to religiously marry as a Christian. However, Sudanese law does not allow any Christian priest in her Muslim country to baptize an apostate Muslim girl who has converted from Islam to Christianity. If he did, the law would punish him severely, either with long imprisonment or by hanging to death. To avoid such a harsh punishment, Reverend Mata Hannah explained to the apostate Muslim girl who had recently converted to Christianity the seriousness of the matter and therefore apologized. Miraculously, this difficult problem was solved. Susan informed Intisar that a Lebanese priest was coming to visit Sudan. He will only be in their church for one day. He will arrive in Khartoum City in the morning and return to Beirut City at night on the same day. Then she told her that her father could ask the Lebanese priest to baptize her as a Christian girl. Although she had voluntarily and sincerely converted from Islam to Christianity, Intisar found herself facing another serious problem. This time her problem is related to her Muslim boyfriend Sammy. What would his reaction be to her apostasy? Will he take it easy and regard it as an educated and enlightened university graduate with the right to his girlfriend to follow any religion she wishes to follow? Or does he consider her an apostate and an infidel, hate her and end his love affair with her? Will he easily surrender to her request, accept her new faith, become an apostate Muslim and a Christian like her, then marry her as a Christian fiancé and his Christian fiancé, or a groom and his bride, and then travel with her outside the country? Intisar knows that her conversion is real because it was based on her bitter experience and resulted from a real and sincere conviction. Her life with the loving Christian family exposed her to new religious laws and values, and she compared them to her own. She has not been brainwashed by anyone nor seduced by worldly promises, such as money or a visa to a Western country. After comparing the two sets of religious laws and values, Intisar realized that she does not need a Christian religious teacher or a pastor or a priest of a church to teach her which religious laws and values are good and which are bad, and which have been revealed by God Almighty, and which are the laws that he inspired and came from the devil Satan. Even an uneducated and ignorant girl who has never been to school can see the difference between the two and choose right from wrong. However, she knows and understands that if her Muslim lover Sammy should accept her newfound Christian fountain of faith and become an apostate like her, it would only be for her sake. He is not as fortunate as she, whose fate made her live among good and righteous Christians, who opened her eyes to the truth of the true religion through the examples of their deeds and words. Despite this problem, the apostate Muslim girl Intisar is willing to accept her lover Sammy's conversion to Christianity, even if it is just a lips conversion. However, Intisar faces a more serious problem and has to share it with her Coptic friend Suzanne. She understood that neither her lover nor she could continue to live in Sudan after their apostasy from Islam, their secret conversion to Christianity, and their sacred Christian marital union. Traveling to a Western country would be a long process and could take more than a year. Meanwhile, if they are discovered, they will be considered apostates and put to death. Moreover, their application to immigrate to a Western country may be rejected. In this case, they have to live underground, and they cannot have children together as husband and wife because their Christian marriage would be illegal in a Muslim country like Sudan and their children bastards. If their secret Christian marital relationship was discovered and their apostasy became public knowledge, they would be punished in the most horrific manner under the law of apostasy in Islamic law. They will be punished as apostates and adulterers. As a result, the apostate Muslim girl turned Christian discussed the dangerous new problem with her Coptic friend. The clever Christian girl, Susan, suggested that Sammy and Intisar must pretend to be Eritreans who fled their country and crossed the border on foot from Ethiopia into Sudan because of the civil war between Eritrean rebels and the Ethiopian army. After that, they must apply for refugee status at the United Nations Refugee Office in Khartoum. Once they have their refugee documents, they can apply for resettlement in a Western country, such as Canada, Australia, or the USA. When they safely reach one of these secular countries flowing with milk, honey, and money, the two socially and religiously persecuted lovers can settle there and live happily ever after. These exciting ideas and promising plans are fine on paper, but applying them in real life in a strict Islamic law society like Sudan is a different question entirely. All those promising plans devised by this smart Christian girl, Susan, were absorbed and accepted by the apostate Muslim girl, Intisar. Then she phoned her Muslim lover, Sammy, and ordered him to come to her and meet her in the biggest Christian church in Khartoum city, which is located opposite to the largest mosque in Sudan. He has to give up everything for her love, including his mother, his brothers and sisters, his religion, Islam, his country, Sudan, and even the wedding of his best friends Silla and Mona. And he comes to her as soon as possible on the day of tomorrow at noon. She makes it clear to him that she has become a Christian girl and wants him to convert to Christianity as well. Only then can their unsolvable problem be resolved and they can marry as Christian lovers. To make him take her decision seriously, the naughty apostate girlfriend threatened her handsome Muslim lover that if he did not come tomorrow to Khartoum city and become a Christian like her, their love would end and they would be separated forever. Intisar was not serious about her threats, but she knows that Sammy loves her and almost worships her. So, she thought he would do whatever she asked of him because of his deep love for her. She knows that even if she asked him to kill his evil father, Osman al-Taib, or her alleged lawful husband, Hassan, he would do so because of his unwavering love for her. For her sake, his despicable father was sent to prison and separated from all his family, including his mother and brothers. Can't he also leave his Islamic religion and accept the Christian religion because of her love? Her answer to her difficult question she thought would be is yes, he can do that for her too. Likewise, she knows that she lost her sister Firdaus and her brother Osman, and was separated from her mother, Sarah, and was expelled from her city, Gedaref, and wandered in the streets of Khartoum without shelter, money, or shoes, and faced 2 brutal rape attempts, and almost turned into a prostitute and a slave, and tried to commit suicide in the Nile River, and eventually became an apostate Muslim and Christian infidel girl because of her sincere love for him. With such great expectations in her heart full of great hope, the beloved apostate Muslim wife who became an infidel Christian woman came to the church, waiting for her handsome Muslim lover Sammy to come to her and for both of them to fulfill the dream of their lives and live happily ever after. Chapter 63. His love for her is greater than the love of Kay's for Layla. Coincidentally, on the same day that her sad lover, Sammy, tried to end his life, his beloved Intisar came to the church and eagerly awaited his arrival. After being rescued by the two men, the heartbroken lover realized that it was God who sent these two swimmers and saved his life. This realization gave him a lot of peace of mind. The fiancé Sammy now felt the same feelings as his fiancée Intisar felt when she heard the ringing of the bells of the Christian church near the bank of the Nile River, where she also tried to end her miserable life. Suddenly his dark and negative suicidal thoughts and fears disappeared, and in their place clarity of mind and courage of heart filled his inner being and cleansed his troubled conscience. As a result of this divine revelation and wonderful realization, he decided to go to his beloved fiancée Intisar and fulfill her wish. When Sammy was brought safely to the bank of the Blue Nile River by two lifeguards, he felt very weak and exhausted. His aimless wanderings through the streets of his city and the time he spent in the prostitute's house, the house of God, and inside the bus during his long trek and walk in Khartoum city sapped him of any strength and energy in his body. Moreover, the traces of the two bitter experiences he had in the tavern of the prostitute Keltumia and in the holy house of God, where 13 bearded Muslim terrorists destroyed his body and almost killed him in the mosque, were gone. In addition to all that, his mouth hadn't tasted food for the past 24 hours. When two rescuers brought him to the bank, he at first could not stand on his feet. They tried to find out why he drowned in the river. They suspected that he has attempted suicide, and so they are worried that he might attempt to kill himself again. That's why they tried to keep him until they could hand him over to the police. Sammy strongly denied their suspicions. He told them he was trying to learn how to swim. The rescuers believed his story and let him go. The rescued lover came out of the water with a different attitude toward his beloved's impossible demand. He decided to go to the church and meet her there. While his dress was still wet, he somehow managed to get to his feet and drag his body to the other side of River Street. Then he stopped a taxi and asked the driver to take him to the largest mosque in Khartoum city. The driver responded to his request and, within 20 minutes, drove him to his final destination. It is the same mosque that his runaway girlfriend, Intisar, has come to twice in the past, seeking refuge and help. But the guard kicked her out and the imam cursed her, ridiculed her, injured her face, and instigated his followers not to help her. In front of the gate of the largest house of God in the city, Sammy stopped an old sheikh who was about to enter the mosque. "Excuse me, uncle, can you point me to the largest Christian church in the capital city?" The old man looked at Sammy with an angry face and entered the biggest mosque in Sudan without saying a word. The devout Muslim old man felt as if Sammy, an impure Christian infidel, had asked him to direct him to a tavern or a store for selling liquor, or to a brothel for prostitutes. The taxi driver heard the lover's request, so he put his head out of the window and told him in a loud voice, "Young man, if you want to go to the biggest Coptic Christian church in Sudan, it is on the opposite side. Direction. Just cross this road, and you will see a big cross on top of an old building. I am a Christian man too, oh my brother in Christ." Sammy thanked the Christian taxi driver and went to the big church. He entered the Christian church in the same miserable manner as his girlfriend had come 2 months earlier. She was barefoot, dragged, rejected, kicked out, homeless, ostracized, runaway, wanted by the police and her alleged husband's spies. Today, though, her boyfriend's outward appearance looks worse than his beloved girlfriend's miserable condition when she dragged her weary body barefoot into the church prayer sanctuary and sat on the last pew. His clothes are filthy and he smells acrid of liquor, sweat, filthy trash container, and muddy water on the riverbank of the Blue Nile. Thousands of flies were hovering around him and sitting on his filthy clothes and his head, as if his body was the carcass of a scabies animal full of many wounds and rotting pus. He is like a miserable Muslim beggar who mistook the church for the mosque. He is also like a pig that has spent a long time sleeping in the gutter before going out to find something to eat. No one will believe him if he says that he is the son of the richest business tycoon in the city of Gaddarif, even if he swears 1,000,000,000 times under the official oath to place his right hand on the Holy Quran or presents his identity card. Worst of all, no one will think that this is the friend of the most beautiful girl in the church. In a short time, Intisar blossomed and began to shine like a bright and shining sun surrounded by planets among other Christian girls. Every Christian boy who saw her loved her and enjoyed talking to her. Some of them even tried to win her heart, but her friend Susan told them that she was in love with a Muslim boy and that she was engaged to her lover. The outcast, runaway, and homeless Muslim girl, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, became in a short period of time the beauty queen in that Christian church, which she entered as a beggar girl when she was abused and rejected by everyone. On that very historic day, the three thugs, Tia, Nisar, and Gagar, are about to walk after the sad lover Sammy. But they suddenly realize that it is a Christian church and that their Islamic faith will not allow them to go to the place of worship of infidel Christians. The large cross above the ancient building showed them that it was the place of worship for Christians. They stood for a while to see if the heartbroken lover Sammy had mistaken the church for the mosque. When they waited a long time and he didn't come out, Mr. Tia took out his notebook again from his pocket and wrote the following report. To the best of my knowledge, I am Tia Coco, the son of the devil. I testify that Sammy Osman al-Tayyib has become mentally ill. His awkward and confusing antics for 24 hours showed that he had become madly in love like Kay's with Layla. The following reasons prompted me to come to such a conclusion. First, his bizarre behavior began by walking aimlessly through the streets of Gadara for 4 hours. During his long walk, he pulled his hair several times, scratched his cheeks, and beat violently on his chest, weeping bitterly. We followed him everywhere he went. Then he took us to a liquor house owned by a well-known prostitute, Keltumia Karbas, who is the mother of the imprisoned gang leader Abu Shakura Wad al-Kalb. She is a black slave, a prostitute, a liquor saleswoman, and her big pussy can fuck a cock of a donkey or the dick of a horse. We all know her and drank alcohol and Marissa in her house and had sex with her several times. When he was there, Sammy started drinking liquor like any person drinks water. While he was sipping on the bitter liquor, he started crying loudly and lamenting the loss of someone. Then another angry drunkard scolded and kicked him for his loud shouting and disturbing the drunks. Instead of taking revenge for the wrong he had done to him, Sammy became friends with his attacker. Then the drunk brought his bottle, his glass, his snack, a pack of cigarettes, a banjo, and a sniffer up and joined him. After talking and drinking with this dangerous criminal man for a long time, Sammy spent the night in the arms of the world's ugliest whore. In the early morning of the next day, he ran away from the house of the prostitute, Keltumia, as if he was being chased by a pricey lioness. Then he heads straight from the hooker's house to the house of God. After the morning prayer, he sat at the feet of the imam of the blessed mosque and listened to his sermon. We had no idea what the virtuous imam preached. After talking with the eminent imam of the mosque and other faithful men, Sammy was beaten by the congregation and their spiritual leader. 5 bearded men had removed his unconscious body from the prayer hall and dumped it into a rubbish container. We also had no idea why the men of Allah and their holy imam were angry with him and beat him mercilessly and threw his unconscious body into the dumpster in front of their mosque. Fortunately, Sammy's half-dead body was not devoured by some stray dogs who were full of rabies. The reason is most likely that all the tired and hungry dogs were asleep at that early hour of the new morning. When he regained consciousness, the heartbroken boy emerged from the filthy dumpster as if he were a zombie or a bastard emerging from his grave or an ownerless stray dog emerged from the stinking sewage. Then hail a taxi and head to Al Taisir bus station. He bought a ticket, climbed up with great difficulty, traveled to Khartoum, and we traveled with him on the same bus. During the long journey, he did many crazy things that made us doubt his mental strength. From the Al-Sug al-Shabi market bus station, Sammy dragged his sick body and walked for more than 3 hours. We also followed him on foot until he reached the riverbank near the Blue Nile Cinema. There he attempted suicide, but was saved by 2 righteous men. They pulled him out of the water like a dead corpse. He rose again like a zombie. Although we suspected that he was acting mad in order to deceive us and get rid of us, his last move made us conclude without a shadow of a doubt that he had gone mad in his love for Intisar like Kay's in his love with Layla. From the riverbank, he took a taxi and went to the largest mosque in Sudan. This time, instead of entering the house of God, the Muslim boy entered the house of Satan. In other words, he entered the church of Christian infidels to pray. After that strange step and abnormal behavior, we decided to separate from him and return to our city. We have concluded that there is no point in following a madman. After writing his report, the chief of spies himself took a move that was even more crazy than that of the insane lover K's. Mr. Tia had not prayed all his life or even knew how to pray, but on that day he was touched by a rare tenderness and asked his two spies, Nisar and Giger, to accompany him to the Grand Mosque. None of the three Muslim thugs knew how to perform ablution, so they walked into the Grand Mosque prayer hall and prayed while impure. After performing their first and perhaps last prayer of their lives, the three spies asked God to forgive them for spying on a mad lover. However, when the so-called mad lover Kays, who had become mad for his love for the beautiful Layla, entered the Christian place of worship, the first impression he had was that he had come to a wedding party. He saw the church decorated with many beautiful flowers, lights of different colors, and hundreds of balloons. Christians are well-dressed, healthy, and obscenely wealthy. From infant to very old they are there. There is a feeling of great joy. The second impression of Sammy is that it is one of the Christian holidays. But then remember that the date does not coincide with any of their festivals such as Jesus' birthday, which they call Christmas, Good Friday, or the Sunday of Christ's resurrection from the dead. He concluded that it is a wedding for a newly married couple. Another realization made Sammy suspect that he had come to a place of worship as he had seen many pretty teenage girls wearing short dresses and talking freely with the boys. He can see their faces, shoulders, hair, big buttocks, as well as their thighs, hips, and half of their breasts clearly visible. So, the Muslim lover thinks he came to the wrong place. The young Sammy, because he is a Muslim man, had never entered a church before, and yet from what he heard people talking about, he formed an idea of what was supposed to be inside. He has an image in his mind of a place where unbelieving Christians come every Sunday morning with dark and sad faces and sit quietly. After sitting silently for some time, an old man in a black robe with a big beard and holding a red book known as the Injil of Jesus Christ, the Son of the Virgin Mary, will address them. When it is over, everyone will leave in silence without speaking to anyone, as if they came out of the place of mourning, carrying their books like dead bodies and walking in a funeral procession. But what Kays, the mad lover, saw today in the Coptic church did not agree with his preconceived wrong notion of the Christian church, which increased his doubts. Sammy stood for a few minutes, reluctant to move forward or back. Then he saw a beautiful girl approaching him smiling and said in a sweet voice, "Sir, may I help you? Is this a Christian church?" "Yes, it is. Are you looking for someone?" "Yes, I am looking for a girl named Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. She is my fiancée." "This name sounds like a Muslim girl's name to me." "That's what she's supposed to be. Do you know any of her Christian friends?" "Not at all. All I know is that she lives with a Coptic family, but I don't know anything about these Christians." "In that case, let me speak to the priest about your girlfriend." Then the pretty Christian girl went and returned shortly after while being followed by an elderly man. Once they reached Sammy, the man spoke to him, smiling happily. "Are you looking for the girl Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir?" asks the man. "Yes, sir." "You must be her fiancé, Sammy." "Yes, you are right, sir. I am Pastor Mata Hannah. Intisar lives in my house. My daughter, Suzanne, and Intisar became very close friends. I am glad to know that she lives in your house, sir. Please follow me." Sammy followed the old man in silence. As he was walking behind him, he was surprised to see a Christian priest in plain clothes. He also has a different picture of a church priest, but he brushes off his surprise. They walked for a while until they reached a place that looked like a swimming pool. Kays al-Majnoun was shocked when he saw his beloved Layla standing in the middle of the pool surrounded by two women and another old man. Sammy at first thought she was in a swimming lesson. He saw the two women holding his girlfriend's waist and shoulders and the old man placing his right hand on her head. Then the old man shouted some words and pushed her under the water. Sammy's initial impression is that the infidels are drowning her in the water. He remembered his terrifying experience in his suicide attempt in the water of the Blue Nile River. So, The madman Kays is about to make his way and jump into the water and save his beloved fiancée Layla from these infidels before they kill her. The crazy lover forgot that he did not know how to swim, and therefore he might drown himself. Before he could put his thought into action, he saw the two women quickly take Intisar's shoulders and get out of the water, hugging her tightly. The man, who shouted a few words, hugged her before pushing her under the water and then shook her hand. Then the two women pulled the beautiful Layla out of the pool while her dress was pouring water like a broken tap. Of course, she looks very hot and even more beautiful with her wet clothes sticking to her sexy body. Priest Mata then approached Sammy's right ear and informed him in a whisper that his fiancée, Intisar, had been baptized with water in her new Christian faith. She completed a water baptism in her conversion to Christianity. She is now a reborn Christian girl. But the Muslim boy, Sammy, understood none of the Christian terms the priest had said about his apostate Muslim girlfriend, Intisar. However, as the beautiful Christian baptized girl Layla and the two Coptic women emerged from the basin, the priest Mata and the handsome Muslim Kays entered the pool from the opposite direction. It so happened that the beautiful and sexy girl Intisar went to change her wet dress without seeing her handsome lover, Sammy. Then the same Sudanese pastor asked the Lebanese priest to come and baptize the Muslim boy Sammy as well. Priest Ghassan asked, "What your name is, my son?" "My name is Sammy Osman Al-Tayyib." "Do you understand what water baptism is?" "No, sir, but it is a necessary religious ritual to make a person a Christian." "Well, this is the duty of Reverend Mata to explain it to you later after I baptize you." Then Priest Ghassan placed his right hand on Sammy's head, and Pastor Mata stood behind him. "I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit," the Lebanese priest shouted. Then Sammy's body was submerged underwater, and the Sudanese pastor Mata Hanna quickly pulled him out. When the water-baptized lover resurfaces, the first person he sees is his beloved Christian girlfriend who had been baptized a few minutes before him. The beloved Intisar did not wait for her lover Sammy to come out and then hug him, but she jumped into the water and wet her dress again. That's not all, but she also wet her sweet lips by kissing her handsome lover in front of everyone on the lips. Chapter 64. A Secret Christian Marriage. At 8:30 in the evening of that wonderful day of the reunion of the persecuted lovers, the beloved Intisar, her beloved Sammy, the Coptic girlfriend Susan, and her Christian boyfriend Andre, left the church. Then the four lovers crossed the road and got into Susan's car. The beautiful Layla and her handsome lover, Kays, took the back seats, while the Coptic sweetheart and her good-looking Christian lover took the front. That day Suzanne was driving her new car. The two passionate lovers, Intisar and Sammy, did not stop looking into each other's eyes. They miss each other very much. They are holding hands. They hugged and kissed several times, but felt that something was missing. They are anxiously awaiting the car's arrival at the restaurant. Whenever his beautiful sweetheart speaks, her handsome friend's ears can not only hear her musical voice, but his tongue can taste its sweetness like honey dripping from her sweet lips. He could see with his eyes and smell with his nose her words falling from her small mouth like flowers and roses. Sammy had never seen his beloved Intisar wearing such a beautiful Western dress before. She looks a million times prettier in Susan's Western Christian t-shirt and trouser than when he saw her in the Islamic abaya and hijab for the last time in the Sharia court before he was kicked out of the courtroom and sent straight to prison and jailed for a month. He also looks very happy and cheerful. After being baptized with water in his new Christian faith, he tore his filthy rags and Rev. Hannah provided him with beautiful clothes for his son Naji. And the son of the richest man in Gadaref city is just as beggar as his poor friend Intisar needed Susan's dress when she threw out her dirty rags 2 months ago. Fortunately, Naji is also like Sammy in height and girth. So, the clothes of the Coptic boy fit Kays al-Majnoun as if they were designed for him. The mad lover longs to kiss his lovely Miss Layla and hold her in his arms. He felt that that also wouldn't be enough for him. He wants to go beyond her sweet lips and enjoy her sexy body for the first time. His heart began to beat faster when he remembered that they were not too far from the peak of sexual happiness. They have been waiting for a long time for their wedding, and finally their special day has arrived. They have fought many battles and defeated their opponents. Finally, the final decisive battle is over. They dropped the mother of all bombs and destroyed all their enemies. Their enemies have suffered a crushing defeat. One by one they were dragged away and thrown behind bars as they should have been there a long time ago. The handsome lover, Sammy, began to imagine his beautiful bride, Intisar, beautifully decorated in her wedding dress. She is sitting next to him. His hand is holding her hand. She smiles at him. They are surrounded by happy, good Christians. Before his imagination takes him beyond the wedding ceremony to their first wedding night in a hotel, the car arrives at Hamad's floating restaurant. The four friends disembarked and separated themselves into two groups. Each group sat in one corner of the wonderful restaurant. The crazy lover Kays and his beautiful lover, Layla, are finally left alone. Then the beloved Sammy put his hands around the waist of his beloved Intisar and pulled her close to him. His sexy girlfriend stood up and came around the table and sat on his lap. He could feel the softness of her delicate and sexy body. Then he hugged her until he felt her warmth. He put his right hand around her waist. His left hand feels her soft cheeks and plump lips. She began to swing her body in his lap. Sammy started kissing her neck. He tried to kiss her back, but he found that her dress was a hindrance to him. He unbuttoned and pulled the zipper on her dress from the top of her neck until he reached just below her waist. He kissed her on the bare part of her back, but now that doesn't satisfy him. Then he put his hands on her shoulders and took off her dress until it reached her waist. Her dress fell at her belly bottom and reached her large buttocks. She was half naked from the back and the front. Then undo her pink bra. Sammy's heart started beating like a drum inside his chest. He saw her bare big boobs, which looked like two pomegranates, and began to caress them. It was the first time that her lover's hands touched her bare breasts. So, Intisar started making love sound like a virgin touched for the first time. His lips began to kiss her bare shoulders, then moved to her neck, cheeks, and mouth. Keep kissing her sweet lips and enjoying her sexy body. Intisar felt the pleasure of the touch of her lover's hands. She wants him and needs him to touch her everywhere. She was sexually aroused to the limit and reached an uncontrollable height. Their happiness might have ended with making love in a public place if the restaurant management had allowed them to do so. The sexy, beautiful Layla might not have stopped her crazy lover Kays if he decided to have sex with her on the big table and enjoy her virgin pussy for the first time. It was the beautiful Coptic girl and her handsome boyfriend, not the waitress in the floating restaurant, who came and separated the happy lovers' lips from each other. Susan whispered in Intisar's ear and told her the restaurant would be closing in a matter of minutes, so it was time to go home. Then the four lovers traveled in the same beautiful car to the home of the Coptic family. The next day, the sun rose with a special promise for the handsome fiancé, Sammy, and his beautiful fiancé, Intisar. Beloved Layla woke up very early that day. She woke up from her sleep in front of her lover, Kays. She knows when the sun will rise again the next day, everyone will call her the Christian bride and wife of Sammy. And when she opens her eyes again, she will see her bridegroom and her Christian husband sleeping beside her. Kays will open his eyes and see Layla's beautiful eyes. He will hug her. He will kiss her. He will push his masculine body against her sexy body. Then his long legs will spread her sexy legs apart. And the two lovers will engage in a wonderful love-making. She will be like a sweet apple to him. He will remove the cover and enjoy its sweetness. As she fancied what would happen between them the next evening, Intisar took the pillow and began to hug and kiss it. Thus began the day when the fiancé would marry his fiancée. Sammy woke up an hour later than Intisar. He spent the night sleeping in the room of the Coptic son Naji while his girlfriend, as she does every night, slept in the room of her friend Susan. He is very happy and excited. He knows that today is the day he waited and fought for so long. His life's dream will come true today. His beloved Intisar will be his life partner forever. She was created for him and he was created for her. They were made by God for each other. She is the only girl who will match and complete him emotionally, physically, intellectually, sexually, and spiritually. Then he remembers their special night as bride and groom. When they are together in one hotel room, he begins to imagine her standing in front of him in her wedding dress. He will take her in his arms and look at her pretty face. Then he will carry her inside the hotel room. He will kiss her cheeks and lips. He will put her on the big bed. Then he gradually begins to reveal the beauty of her inner charm. He starts from the shoulders until reaches the feet. He will enjoy her inner charm for the first time. As husband and wife united in a sacred Christian bond, they will have sex together for the first time and thus become one soul and one body. They will be united forever and live happily ever after. On that special day, Susan took Intisar to the beauty salon. Sammy was told to stay home and go with Pastor Madahana directly to the church. It was decided to hold their Christian marriage in strict secrecy. Only Pastor Mada, his wife Sarah, son Naji, daughter Susan, and her boyfriend Andre are invited to attend the secret Christian wedding. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the fiancé Sammy and Reverend Mada left the house and headed to the church. It's a 40-minute drive away. As they travel in silence, the lover thinks about his special day. He couldn't believe he was going to his wedding. He was not wearing a new dress. He still wears the same shirt and trousers that Reverend Mada gave him. Then he remembered the day his older brother, Mustafa, got married. More than 50 cars were following his brother's beautiful new Mercedes car. Many women were singing beautiful songs. The children were screaming happily. Boys and girls were clapping their hands. The beautiful young women were playing the drums and tambourines while singing the songs of Aladil Wal Alzain, which are the wedding sweet songs in Sudan, on the day of the wedding ceremony. Every woman and girl made with her lips and tongue ululation songs of joy or Zagarit al-Farah. The whole city took to the streets to see the beautiful bride and the handsome groom. Unfortunately, today, no one noticed that there was a groom's car on the beautiful Nile Street on his way to his bride. A few tears fell from the fiancé Sammy's eyes when he remembered his brother Mustafa's great joyful wedding day. The Coptic girl, Susan, and the fiancé, Intisar, arrived at the church 15 minutes after the Christian pastor and the fiancé Sammy came. The to-be bride wears her white wedding dress elegantly and beautifully. Pastor Madahana was surprised when he saw her in her gorgeous wedding dress. His memory took him back to the day she first entered his church. She came in a torn and dirty dress. Her clothes were full of mud, dirt, sweat, blood, and the stench of fish. Her hair was tousled like a crazy girl's hair. Her eyes were surrounded by black circles. Her face was filled with fear and her body was starving with hunger pangs. She stank like a miserable beggar. Anyone who had seen her that day while she was sitting on the last seat in the church's prayer sanctuary would have thought her to be a mad, homeless girl. But today, as she is walking towards him, he can see a different girl. Her eyes reveal the happiness in her heart. Her innocent smile showed him that she had not offended anyone. Her face is joyful and her steps graceful. She seemed to him like an innocent child who had found her parents after a long separation. When the beloved fiancé, Intisar, sat next to her dear fiancé, Sammy, on their wedding thrones, Reverend Madahana rose to his feet in front of them. Then he took out 2 gold rings from his pocket. He put one wedding ring on the table and gave the other to Sammy. Then the to-be groom was asked to pronounce after the pastor the sacred Christian marriage vow. This ring that I give you, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, is a token of my love for you. I promise before the most holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and before the holy angels and the Church of Christ from this day forward to accept you as my wife. I will leave my father and mother and stick to you. I also promise to love you, take care of you, and share everything I have with you. I will honor you with my body and remain faithful to you all the days of my life. Only death can separate us. Sammy repeated every word that Pastor Mada said. Then he inserted the golden ring into the left finger of Intisar's hand. After that, priest Mada gave Intisar another wedding ring and asked her to say after him the holy Christian marriage vow. This ring I give to you, Sammy Osman Al-Tayyib, as a token of my love for you. I promise you before the most holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and before the holy angels and the Church of Christ from this day onward I accept you as my husband. I also promise to love and honor you with my body and share with you all that I have. I will submit myself to you and remain faithful to you till death do us part." Intisar repeated the words of the Coptic priest word for word, then put the ring on Sammy's finger on his left hand. As a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ, continues Reverend Mada, and pastor of his church, Sammy Osman Al-Tayyib and Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, I declare you husband and wife in a holy Christian marriage. You can now kiss the bride. The couple hugged each other, then the handsome groom, Sammy, kissed his beautiful bride, Intisar, on her sweet lips. Susan is the first to go and hug her dear friend Intisar and congratulate her. Then her mother, brother, and friend followed her. All members of the happy family happily embraced the new couple and then warmly shook hands and congratulated them. Each of them gave a wedding gift to the newlywed lovers. After that, the priest Madahana brought the marriage book and made Sammy and Intisar enter their names and then sign their holy Christian marriage contract. When the newlyweds signed their marriage contract, Reverend Madahana also added his name and signature. Mrs. Sarah Hannah, Mr. Naji, Miss Susan, and Mr. Andre wrote their names and addresses and added their signatures as witnesses to the marriage of the handsome groom, Sammy Osman Al-Tayyib, and the beautiful bride, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. After completing the secret Christian marriage contract, Reverend Mada promised the newly married couple that he would tell his secretary tomorrow morning to issue 2 official marriage contracts and 2 water baptism certificates, then hand them over to them as proof of their baptism as Christians, as well as their holy matrimonial union certificates. These documents shall prove their sacred Christian marital union in the Church of Christ. When everything was done according to the will of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, and the presence of the holy angels, the 5 happy cops and the newly married Christian couple repeated 3 times in unison the anointed cries of joy. Praise be to God and Hallelujah. Chapter 65. The first wedding night of the newly married Christian lovers. On the first day of the honeymoon, the beautiful bride, Intisar, entered the hotel, followed by her handsome groom, Sammy. All the guests in the spacious hall are looking at the beautiful bride. Every man wished to be the lucky groom, and his erected phallus became a Ramadan cannon inside his jalabia, while every woman envied the bride for her amazing beauty and wished her deflowered cunt to be as her virgin pussy. With pride and dignity, the newly married couple checked in and received the key to their room from a lovely reception girl. Then they went upstairs. At the door of the room, the groom raised his bride, took her in his arms, and entered the room. The beloved Intisar felt ashamed and covered her face with both hands. Then her lover, Sammy, gently placed her sexy body on the bed and sat next to her. The beautiful bride, still shy, did not open her eyes and look at her handsome groom. Her lover understood the reason for her shyness. Then the groom pulled out a cassette tape that the beautiful Coptic girl Susan had given them as one of the many wedding gifts. Then insert it into the recorder. The sweet voice of the Egyptian singer Kakab al-Sharik Kalthum started singing. This is my night and the dream of my life between the past and the coming. Fancy your all and aspirations. Fill the cup with love and give. Then the groom took off his shirt and hung it on a chair. After that, he came and sat near to his heart's desire. He grabbed her hands and tried to remove them from her face. The bride resisted him and her face was sufficiently covered. He approached her face and kissed her on the forehead. She turned in the other direction. Then he put his hand on her long hair and started to slowly move it down. His hand slowly moved from her hair to her shoulders and reached her narrow waist. Then he took off his shoes and put his legs on the bed. His hand resumed its gradual journey downward until it reached the big buttocks, and there it rested for a while. No reaction yet from the introverted girl. The hand started moving from side to side on the big ass of the shy bride, but it stayed at the same level. The groom started to feel the effect of his touch. Then he moved his body down and slowly extended it close to the body of his bride. He put his hands around her body and hugged her. He placed his right hand on her stomach and began to slowly move it upwards. The hand continued to climb by degrees until it reached its search target. There he held the left breast of his bride, similar to a pomegranate. The shy bride started to show a slight response. The groom's hand continued to caress the big breast for a while, then moved to the other breast. Sammy started to feel the power of making love. So, he pressed his body against the delicate and soft body of Intisar. From the top of his head to the bottom of his feet, he felt the sexy body of his beloved bride. Surprisingly, she has not yet responded to him. The groom became anxious. That was why he started whispering some words of love into her ear. Despite the emotional words of love, the bride did not respond or react. The groom's hand began to climb higher than her large breasts until it reached her soft cheeks. It wandered from her cheeks in search of sweet lips. His attempt to reach her wet lips was unsuccessful as they were still protected by her hands. When she blocked his hand with hers, he returned to her breasts. At least this sensitive area of the big boobs is not protected. The hand continued to caress the young breasts of his beautiful bride. The groom knows that her sexy breasts are completely hidden under her wedding dress and bra. While making this exciting first exploration of his lover's hidden body parts, the lover started rubbing his dick on her big ass. He is now sexually aroused and ready to make love. But what about her? It seems that she decided not to show any response. An idea entered the lover's mind, and he decided to put it into practice. He left her breasts. He pulled his body away from her back. Intisar felt her liberation from his sexy touch. Before she could tell his next move, she felt his hand touch her again. This time she loved her more because something more amazing was coming. Then he put his hand on her wedding dress and caught the zipper and slowly moved it down. His hand is trembling as if he is trying to steal something he has no right to touch and own. He breathed loudly as he started to see her beautiful naked body starting to gradually reveal her inner charm from neck to waist. Her dress had completely unzipped. The beautiful and sexy bride didn't even try to stop him from taking off her clothes and enjoying her virginity. He is her holy Christian bridegroom, and she is his virgin Christian bride, and she believes that everything in her is his. Even if he wanted to do it with her all night long, she wouldn't stop him. She had waited so long for this special wedding night to come, and it had finally arrived. The sexy bride started to feel his hand roaming from shoulder to shoulder. Then she felt him gently massaging her bare back. She loves what her groom does to her delicate body, enjoys it, and wants more and more of it. After those sexy touches that made her private parts wet, she felt the hand climb back up to her shoulders, but it used the shoulders as a stepping stone to reach the other side. His hand grabbed one of her bare breasts. This gave her an amazing sense of sexual pleasure. His hand began to fondle her nipples very gently. Vibrations swept through her entire young body like an electric current and gave her a powerful sexual stimulation. She is now excited and ready. So, she slowly moved her body back until she touched his. The groom felt very good when his attractive bride started showing a sexual response. Then he pressed his body against hers. As he pushed his body, the groom began to feel the bride's soft body begin to sway back, up, and sideways. Her body movements gave her lover indescribable pleasure. He put his lips to her ear and started to whisper a few words to her. "I love you so much, my sweetie Intisar. You are so beautiful tonight. I love your eyes, your cheeks, your nose, your hair, your hands, your shoulders, your lips, your breasts, and your whole body. You are so sweet and sexy." She does not respond to his words. He realizes that she is still too shy to talk to him because she knows what they're going to do on this special night. His passionate words revealed his intense sexual desire for her. Sammy stopped whispering in her ear and tried to take off her wedding dress completely, but he couldn't. Her hands still cover her face. He was banned again. He knows the physical pleasure that he feels like climbing upstairs. When he reaches one stage, he wants to go up to a higher stage. He can't go back even if he wanted to. But at every step he is hampered by her shyness. He decided to do something about it. Another great idea entered his mind. He raised his hand and pulled his body. Her body movements immediately stopped. Sammy looked for a while at her beautiful body lying in front of him. He saw her bare shoulders and back. He approached her again and kissed her shoulder. No response. Her neck. No reaction. Then her back. Nothing happened either. The sexually aroused groom sat on the bed and kept looking at her sexy legs. He saw that they were plump and shining like gold, and at their upper end were large buttocks. They have the color of mango yellow and bright white. They were pulled along the bed. They're pretty and sexy, but they're covered up with her long, sheer white wedding dress. The lover understood that his beloved sexy legs were not guarded by her hands. Wherefore, he reached out his right hand and grabbed her wedding dress and slowly began to roll it up. It is like opening a hidden treasure of gold. Then the groom stopped and took off his bride's shoes. They are high heels. Her feet are the first parts that reveal themselves to him. They are beautiful and charming. He continued to discover the inner charm of his lover. Never before had he attempted to uncover those hidden treasures which were left for him and him alone to discover and possess. The white translucent dress gradually began to reveal her legs. Her right leg rests on her left leg. Sammy stopped his journey to the top and kissed her feet. Kissing them does not satisfy him now. Then he placed his hands and felt their softness. He was instantly stimulated by an indescribably erotic desire for the sexy body of his beautiful bride. He saw the shy girl begin to move under his hands. She does not use one of her hands to stop him from the upward flight. She knows where his hand is going and where it will land. This is where the journey must end and their happiness can reach its sexual climax. Sammy hasn't spent much time on her feet because he also longs for a bigger discovery. Then he pulled the dress a little higher. The sexy thighs are starting to reveal their charms. Her fully exposed thighs caused his hand to shake again. When the thighs were fully discovered, he let go of the dress and looked at his sweetheart's inner charm. This exciting sight may have satisfied him before, but not on this special night. This is the night he waited for so long and fought his rival, the selfish Hassan, and his conspirators. He has sent all the bad guys to jail except for her alleged legal Muslim husband. Sammy tried to commit suicide in the waters of the Blue Nile because of his strong love for Intisar. Finally, after a hard effort, he won and married her, and she became his life partner. Then the groom put his hands down and began to feel her thighs. The reflection of the bright light on her thighs showed them to him as if they were made of pure gold. They are her hips, full and rich. Sexual touches give him a wonderful and new experience that he has never experienced with any other young woman in his life. To express his joy with the overwhelming happiness he now feels in his heart, the groom once again put his lips on the ear of his beloved and started whispering to her, "My beautiful bride, you have a sexy body. You are so beautiful. I didn't know you had such sexy legs, thighs, and hips. They made me feel excited. You made me feel so sexy about you today." When Intisar did not stop him and did not respond to his sexual words full of strong sexual desire, Sammy picked up the dress again and was about to take it off and reveal her small underwear. But he got scared and stopped. His heart began to beat faster and louder. His hands are trembling and his face is sweating. Fear filled his heart. He does not know where these sudden negative feelings originated from. He silently asked himself, why I am now afraid. She is now his beloved and holy Christian bride, and he is her lover and lawful husband. He therefore concluded that the fear was not due to him trying to have sex with his bride nor for some unknown reason, but due to the evil plot that led to their long and painful separation. He somehow ignored the fear and made his last move, pulling the dress up to her waist. The final stage of his discovery was successfully achieved. What he sees now we cannot describe because it is personal, private, and confidential. Sammy quickly put his hand on it and started to feel it and enjoy touching her virgin pussy. Although the undergarment concealed it from him, he still enjoyed it immeasurably, and no human language could understand such a wonderful feeling. Her little red underwear, which is like a swimsuit, doesn't cause him any problem because he prefers to see it covered. The sight of her little red underwear sends him sexual secretions that make him soar higher and faster in the sky of pleasure. His sexual desire increases in seconds and climbs to the highest peak. He felt like he might have a sudden, strong ejaculation of his semen at any moment. He understood that if such a sudden sexual explosion occurred to him and he reached his orgasm, he would be a selfish groom who had stimulated his bride and suddenly left her to reach orgasms on her own. He should help her reach a clitoral orgasm and vaginal orgasm. which is expressed in G-spot. Sammy had read books about women's orgasms and sex and had come to know that experts say a clitoral and vaginal orgasm is the most powerful finale. It can be twice as powerful as an orgasm by itself. He decided to act quickly before it was too late. He began to reach behind her panties and touch her wet, naked cunt. Now and then his hand slipped under the undergarment and touched its moisture. She's a virgin and she got really wet in that private part of her pussy. Touches in such a sensitive area finally caused the unresponsive girl to overcome her shyness and respond positively. Not only physically, but she began moaning. The sexy bride slowly spread her legs apart and waited. She feels her groom's hand now moving everywhere and touching everything. Sometimes she feels it on her legs, sometimes on her shoulders, sometimes on her breasts, caressing them and tickling her nipples. Then on her thighs, buttocks, under her underwear, and on her virgin pussy. The final touch where the hand seems to be stuck forever gives her the greatest sexual pleasure a girl can ever feel. Every moment she wants more of it. It is like a cup that gradually fills until it begins to overflow. The immense pleasure she feels in her virginal pussy has taken her to a level that has made her overcome her shyness. She finally lifted her hands from her face, turned her body over, and quickly hid her face in her lover's chest. The groom understood that his beloved bride now surrenders and is ready to offer her sweetness and virginity. Then he pulled off her entire dress from her body and threw it on the floor. In his next step, he removed her bra. Her big breasts are now out in the open. He started flirting with them. He also tickled their nipples and sucked them with his lips and tongue. He takes great pleasure in stroking the big boobs. They're like two pomegranates. He can't stop now. At the same time, the handsome lover is looking at his bride's beautiful, sexy body. Every part of it is naked except that private part is still hidden behind the little red lingerie, or the bride's almayo, which hides it from view. Although he touched and rubbed her private parts and felt wet several times, he still hadn't seen her pussy. Sammy undressed. Then stopped touching it. That done, the handsome groom leaned over his naked, beautiful bride and kissed her forehead. What a pretty face she has. He had seen her face many times, but tonight he saw it in the light of a different time and place. Her eyes twinkle like stars. She sucks her own lips. Her lips became wet. Her cheeks shimmered. It seemed that they produced some kind of fragrant liquid that made them shine even more. They glow like a beacon. Every now and then her lips parted from each other and reveal her white teeth. Her even teeth locked together like a virgin feeling a slight pain. Her straight nose breathed softly and slightly in a loud voice. Her long black hair was loosely draped over her sexy body. There are some drops of sweat on her forehead. Her lover could now hear and feel her heart beating. Her naked body spreads the scent of Sudanese feminine perfumes such as Dilka, Kamra, Indian sandals, and some other foreign perfumes. Her hands and feet are decorated with black henna tattoos. She is an excellent example of a beautiful and perfect Sudanese bride. The groom now wonders for some time what he should do to her next. Does he kiss her sweet lips, continue to caress her luscious body, or does he do both? He approached her lips, then whispered softly to her, "I love you so much, Intisar." "I love you too," Sammy whispered to him. When he heard her lips uttering those loving words, he pressed his lips to hers and began to kiss her. He kissed her many times before, but today it feels like he is kissing her for the first time. It's a strong, deep, and long kiss. It started with both lips and then moved to the lower lip. Finally, he caught her soft tongue and began to suck the honey from it. She pushed her tongue between his lips and let him suck on it. While he was sucking on her tongue, his left hand held her head and his right hand quickly roamed all over her naked body. It can't rest in one part. It started with the hair and moved to the shoulders and went down to the waist, hips, ass, and slid from one buttock to the other and wandered in between. He very much enjoys the part that is divided up the two of them. Keep feeling those big buttocks. They are like two hills between a valley. Then his hand slips away from them, moves forward, hides under her underwear, and touches her virgin pussy. There he also stayed for a while. Back up. But this time it changed direction. He started again with the legs and moved to the thighs and reached the midsection. His hands stayed there for a very long time. As he had done before, he continued to feel the wetness of her wet, virginal pussy and massaged it gently. But the groom is still afraid to take off his bride's tiny red underwear and make love to her. He is like a young teen who is inexperienced in sex and needs help in bed from his sexual partner. He has never had sex with a girl before. He is like his maiden bride. No matter how much the ugly prostitute Kaltumia tried with his dead drunk body, which saturated with big quantity of her bitter homemade liquor, she could not sexually arouse him or have sex with his dick. His penis remained soft and cold, as if it were not part of his intoxicated, lifeless body. Then the prostitute used his 2 middle fingers and masturbated her big pussy until she felt a slight kind of sexual satisfaction in her big open hairy cunt. So, Sammy remained a virgin young man until today. Tonight, with his virgin beloved bride, he wants to reach the pinnacle of their happiness. Intisar has decided to take the final step. She also kept herself, despite her dire circumstances in Khartoum City, pure and virgin to her lover. Today, she is ready to offer her love, purity, and virginity to her lover. She fought human beasts and prevented them from raping her and taking away her virginity. She even defied law enforcement officers when they tried to kidnap her and transfer her to a selfish man who bought her against her will from her criminal half-brother Omar, as if she were a sex slave or his half-sister slave who was exposed naked in the slave market for sale at the time of the Prophet Muhammad. But on this special day for them, as a beloved Christian bride lies in bed naked near her lover and holy groom on their first wedding night and is ready to give him what is his and his alone. Her lover enjoys her small mouth while his lips suck the honey from her sweet lips and soft tongue. She can't wait any longer and is about to take off her little red panties herself and climb onto her boyfriend's body. She wants to feel his erect cock inside her virgin pussy and fucking her all night long. As her naked body generates such indescribable sexual pleasure and wets her virgin pussy, her mind suddenly begins to recall some memories of the past. She's tried so hard to get such memories out because the time isn't right for them. She knows if she lets them do that inside her mind, they might ruin the happiest night of her life. Despite her best efforts, they forced themselves inside her being and caused her mind to examine them. The first memory was caused by the position of her lover's body. Half of his body was now resting on her sexy body. That situation reminded her of the fat human monster Wad al-Bala Jar al-Nabi. When she woke up in a panic from her deep sleep in the brothel of the evil lady pimp, Mother Nafisa, she found that the obese beast man Bulbul was trying to rape her. She struggled to free herself from his huge, heavy body. His large mouth was producing a strong stench of alcohol, snuff, and banjo. Also, his obese body generates a strong smell of sweat, as if he had not showered with soap and water for several weeks. Intisar knew that having sex with such a human beast would degrade her and lower her status to an animal, just like a pet small doogie raped by a huge stray street dog, which has no known owner. Fortunately, before he could rape her, desecrate her holy body, and steal her virginity and purity, she grabbed his fat fingers and began to bite them with her sharp teeth with all her might. Her teeth sank deeply into his fleshy flesh until they hit the bone. Her sharp teeth caused him unbearable pain until his heavy body rolled off her body and landed like a rickety old building hit by a powerful tornado. Then she jumped like a missile fired from the ground to the ground and fled for her virginity, her purity, and her life from the den of prostitutes and rapists. She preferred to spend her second night in the tombs among the dead than to sleep among the living human beasts in the brothel house of that evil woman, the lady pimp Nafisa, the daughter of the dead Muslim Saint Jabbar al-Maksura. She slept on top of the grave of her late, innocent sister Firdaus until she was awoken by the scream of the frightened teenage girls who mistook her for a zombie girl rose up of her grave. The second memory that follows, of course, is that of the evil usurper, the lustful military major Al-Sinisni. He was too strong for her to overcome him because he was not as drunk as the fat beast man Bulbul. He was a well-trained soldier. He knew how to control his victim. She couldn't do anything to stop him from raping her and robbing her of her virginity. He treated her like a homeless street whore. He believed that she was a prostitute who had sex with her lover and became pregnant with an illegitimate child or a bastard baby before marriage, and that is why her angry Muslim father or her Arab brother wanted to slay her in an honor killing. Then she fled from the city of Al-Ghadarif and came to the capital city of Sudan and became a homeless girl without home and money, and in the end she became a high-profile whore in a brothel. It is likely that somehow her Muslim father and members of her family and Arab relatives learned of her hiding place in the brothel in Khartoum City. So, they all came to kill her in the house of high-ranking prostitutes, but she managed to escape from them. She ran barefoot until she survived them by sheer coincidence when her feet brought her to the army mountain and she entered inside the forbidden military base. Then she lied to him with the false story about the verdict obedience ruling issued against her by the Sharia court in Ghadarif City and her escape from her fictitious legal husband and the policeman. The lustful major thought he could keep her in his house and rape her every night and pay her a few Sudanese pounds of his good money for her sex as a cheap homeless whore. His ugly and skinny wife was nothing compared to her beauty and sexy body. Major Sinasni wanted to keep her in his house as a beautiful teenage concubine or Masar's secret wife so that he could enjoy her tender body and young age for a long time. Therefore, he wanted to marry her secretly as a Muslim wife of Mizyar, in the same Islamic marriage that the lady pimp, the mother of Nafisa, married her to the wealthy businessman Bulbul Wad al-Bala, the neighbor of the Prophet. Perhaps he can also divorce his odious and skinny first Muslim wife and marry the beautiful whore instead of her or makes her a second Muslim wife. He even considered the possibility of arranging the assassination of his ugly wife with poison or by paying a lot of money to a hired killer and then marrying the beautiful and sexy teenage girl that chance and good luck brought him. Tonight, the naked bride Intisar remembered what was then called the disobedient runaway Muslim wife. That fateful night when the major's large and huge phallus was trying to force itself violently inside her small virgin vagina like a saw trying to split her body in two. It was also like a sharp knife cutting through her tender flesh, like an innocent lamb being slaughtered by a butcher. When she could not expel him from her body, she lost hope and began to weep for her purity and virginity. It would be defiled and shattered forever in a few minutes. Although his cruel wife abused her and treated her like a worthless slave, Intisar still thanks her in her heart for saving her in the nick of time from her lustful husband's rape. What a painful experience for a young girl to be raped by those two despicable human beasts, the obese rich man Bulbul Wad al-Bala and the lustful soldier Major al-Sanusi. Her memories of the past stopped and her mind was compelled to imagine her so-called legal Muslim husband, Hassan Majub al-Hilali, in the place of her handsome Christian groom, Sami. She imagined herself under his heavy body as he tried to rape her. No one could save her from being raped by him even if she screamed the loudest shout in the world. His rape would have been legitimized and justified by law in the name of Islamic legal halal marriage. If the lawyer Sulla had not helped her escape from while she was disguised as a handsome boy, the policeman would have broken into her house the next morning, arrested her, and taken her to the house of obedience by force. He was going to rape her and enslave her forever. She imagined him trying to kiss her. She turns her face in all directions and hides her lips inside her mouth. He will exercise his physical superiority as a male and force his erect penis into her virgin vagina, tearing and defiling her. Tears began to run down her cheeks when she imagined that he had raped her, taken away her virginity, and desecrated her holy body. It would not be a rape for one day or a month, but for the rest of her life. She will become his sex slave and his servant wife and will remains forever be his sex victim. Perhaps he will keep her in the obedience house for a long time and treat her as a slave female. He would not release her until he tamed her with his stick and dick, makes her his submissive and docile Muslim wife, and therefore transformed her through sexual rape from a disobedient wife into an obedient woman. Then he could continue to rape her day and night. She will lose her value as a human being and become less than an animal. The beautiful, sexy naked virgin bride somehow managed to banish those sad memories of the past and unpleasant imaginations and focus in bed on making physical love with her lover, groom, and true Christian husband. Then she turned her body and faced him. She opened her legs and let her groom's legs enter between them. Her boyfriend understood that she was ready. So, he stopped kissing her. The two lovers started hugging and touching each other's bodies. They are experiencing great moments of pleasure and joy. Her groom is not alone touching her body anymore, but the bride too hugs and kisses him. She finally felt his hand grab her little red panties and began to undo them. She stopped her movements and his touches and helped him take off her underwear. When her red underwear reached her knees, she sat down on the bed and took it off herself. She throws it on the floor and she is completely naked and ready to voluntarily have sex for the first time in her life. She felt his hands place her gently on the bed. Then she stretched out her legs, spread them wide, and bent them halfway. After that, she attracted her lover to her. His whole body now lay all over her body. She loves and wants to feel his masculine weight on her naked body. Their completely naked bodies are intertwined and held together. Their hearts beat loudly like drums. What happy moments for a Virgo girl when she has sex with her lover for the first time. And what a painful and cruel experience it was for a virgin girl to be raped by a human beast or a groom whom she was forced by her father or brother to marry him against her will and without her consent. All her pleasure and feelings now focus on the small part of her body where her lover's hand gently fondles and caresses it. Whenever he touches her in her virgin pussy, she feels a strong stream of pleasure that starts from there and in a few seconds spreads all over her naked body. The great pleasure made her hold her lover very tightly, and every now and then she would lift her midsection up and push him on his big erect dick. She now wants him to insert it completely into her virgin pussy. Her legs meet on top of her lover's back. This repeated act now prevents her groom from using his hand. So, he removed his hand from what is called in Arabic her camel or in English her pussy and replaced it with his cock. Intisar began to feel that Sammy seemed to forcefully push his large phallus into her small, circumcised virgin vagina. She spread her legs wider to make it easier for him to reach his cock inside her pussy. She doesn't need or want anything except for his big dick in her virgin pussy to go in and out with a faster motion and a longer time before ejaculation. His repeated attempt to penetrate her gives her an immense amount of pleasure. She started to make moaning sounds because of the great happiness she is feeling now. The bride, Intisar, wants to scream happily about the immense sexual pleasure her groom, Sammy, gives her. The fun is just too much to take in anymore, mixed with some mild pain. She started moaning and crying softly. As her lover tries again and again to insert his huge, fully erect dick into her tiny virgin pussy, her mind begins to interfere again. It's not a memory or a fantasy this time, but her mind suddenly filled with many ideas. The naked bride tries to prevent the agitation of the unpleasant thoughts that are beginning to fill her mind. But these ideas are very stubborn and harmful. Intisar felt as if she no longer had control of her mind. Stubborn thoughts did not come as dreams, fantasies, or hallucinations. Not even the memories of her bitter experience wandering aimlessly through the streets of Khartoum City without shelter, money, or shoes. They came as sounds of screaming and crying. Like some intruder was ringing loud bells inside her mind. It was so loud and clear that she thought it was coming from the mouth of a real human. It is the voice of a young girl. This crying girl is as if sleeping next to her on the same bed and screaming loudly asking for help. Thus, the naked bride had to open her eyes and look around. The naked bride Intisar did not see anyone but her naked groom, Sammy. And so, she concluded that the crying girl's voice was just a figment of her imagination. Then the girlfriend closed her eyes again and tried to focus on her boyfriend and the wonderful time of sex pleasure they were having together on their first wedding night in the hotel room. Alas, what a pity she heard the crying girl screaming again. The girl screamed over and over while calling her name Intisar and pleading for her help. This time the naked bride recognized the crying voice. It is the voice of her late sister Firdaus. Intisar can now hear and see very clearly her sister crying out for help. She is bound hands and feet. She couldn't do anything to stop him from raping her. The evil old man gulped like a ferocious beast or a fearsome octopus over her sister's young and tender body. His fleshless bones pierce her delicate body like a scary turtle or crocodile. It is piercing her flesh like long thrones of a hedgehog while creeping slowly on her naked body. His toothless mouth bit her lips. His tongue was like that of a mad dog sucking, licking, and biting her mouth and cheeks. His old cock was like a rusty old piece of metal that had forcibly inserted itself into her virgin vagina. It caused her unbearable pain. Her vagina was oozing profusely red blood like a broken faucet or tap while her mouth was vomiting. She was crushed and smothered. She was crushed like a small sparrow by the claws of a vulture. She was slaughtered like an innocent lamb by the knife of a ruthless butcher. When Intisar clearly saw her naked little sister Firdaus dying like helpless prey under the evil old man's fleshless body, she started crying loudly. Her bridegroom thought his bride was screaming at the pain every young virgin experiences at her first sexual intercourse. He also thought that his large phallus had penetrated her small virgin pussy and broken her hymen, and this caused her unbearable pain. So, he immediately stopped pushing his big cock more inside her virgin pussy and started massaging her body. By then he had nearly penetrated her virginal private parts. When massaging his hands did not stop her from crying, he raised his head and looked at her face. He saw her tears fall from her beautiful eyes like great drops of torrential rain in mid-autumn. "I am very sorry, my beloved Intisar," the lover Sammy says in a tender voice. "I did not know that this might hurt you and pain you so much. I've never had sex with any woman before but you as my bride today. If I knew that, I would do it gently, slowly, and gradually. I heard every virgin like you would feel some pain on her first wedding night. I promise you that you will never feel this severe pain again after today." From his many words of apology, his bride understood that her groom was still flying in the sky of high pleasure. As for her, she had already landed on the ground. She had lost all the joy of her lover's gentle touches. They gave her wings and made her fly high in the blue sky of the pleasure realm. Suddenly her wings broke and she crashed like an airplane, and every sense of pleasure came out of her naked body. She is also like a balloon that was inflated and started to fly into the sky, and suddenly it exploded and fell. To hide her pain and tears, once again, the bride put her hands on her face and turned her naked body in the opposite direction. The groom did not give up. He began to rejuvenate and revive the pleasure in the sexy body of his naked bride. He started stroking her breasts again. From there, he moved to the shoulders, neck, and cheeks until he reached the lips. He discovered that those sexy parts of her naked body no longer interested him. His right hand moved quickly down to her cunt. This is the sensitive part of her body that the bridegroom reached for before his beloved bride shook him from his wondrous happiness with her weeping and tears. As his middle fingers vibrated, he began to gently rub her clit and labia. He felt the softness and smoothness of her cunt wet his fingers. Intisar responded immediately by shaking her body and pushing it up. Sammy continued fondling her pussy. He saw her start rocking her body up and down. This time he quickly removed his hand from her hairy camel and replaced it with his tongue. He began sucking and licking her clitoris and labia. He heard his hot bride start making those wonderful pleasure sounds. She also starts talking to him and encouraging him to continue what he's doing to her. She tells him that she likes it very much and wants more and more of it. After a while, she stopped him and reached for him from her mouth and started sucking and licking his cock as well. His penis has been aroused to perfection. Therefore, the groom, Sammy, felt a lot of enjoyment, while his bride, Intisar, was sucking and licking his phallus as if it were a lollipop or an ice cream cone. And also, he had tasted before her crying the sweetness of the moisture of her wet pussy on his tongue, like vanilla ice cream. But he became worried that he might ejaculate semen inside her mouth and leave her sexually unsatisfied. That's why he stopped her from licking and sucking his fully erect cock and went all over her naked body. Her legs quickly spread out and surrounded his legs. Sammy's big dick began to penetrate Intisar's pussy again. This time he felt her push up so hard that his cock was fully inserted inside her pussy and filled it perfectly all around its small opening. Then the boyfriend's phallus has started to move in and out of the girlfriend's pussy faster and harder. The pretty bride started creating those beautiful sexual sounds again. The handsome groom kept moving faster and faster until he let his white semen into her womb. Lover Sammy felt the greatest amount of sexual pleasure he had ever enjoyed in his life. The beloved bride held him very tightly as she felt the drops of semen dripping down the inside of her pussy and deepening until it reached her womb and united them forever. The beloved Intisar also reached the peak of her sexual pleasure and had sudden thick discharge with orgasms. Naked Bride enjoyed simultaneous vaginal and clitoral orgasm for the first time in her life. It's like an earth-shattering orgasm. Finally, the two horribly persecuted lovers, the rich son Sammy and the poor daughter, Intisar, managed to break all social, religious, and legal barriers and fulfill their life's dream and unite in heart, mind, soul, and body forever. They felt that on this historic day of their holy Christian marriage they had together achieved the impossible, since they had always believed that no power in heaven above and no authority on earth below could succeed in preventing them from uniting together as everlasting husband and wife and shall live happily ever after.